My name is Jessica Miller, and I never imagined a single moment would change the dynamic of my family so drastically. I always thought I had a good sense of control, a strong grip on what was right and wrong, on what should be said, and what must remain unspoken. That illusion shattered the day my stepson walked in at the worst possible time. And no matter how many days pass, I still remember every second of it. It was early spring, one of those odd transitional weeks where winter hasn't completely loosened its grip, but the breeze carries just enough warmth to make you believe otherwise. My husband Mark had left the night before on a week-long business trip to Seattle. His absence didn't bother me much. We were used to the separation. He worked in consulting and often left for several days at a time. I usually stayed behind, managing the house, keeping things together while he juggled airports and clients. That Sunday, I had the house to myself. It was quiet, save for the distant chirp of birds and the occasional creak of our aging floorboards. I just finished folding laundry in the living room and was making my way to the kitchen when the front door opened. At first, I froze. Mark was supposed to be on the West Coast by now. But then I heard a familiar voice call out my name.
Jess.
It was Jake, my 19-year-old stepson. I hadn't seen him in weeks. He'd moved into a college dorm last fall and only came back for holidays. We weren't particularly close, but we shared a polite, warm relationship. When Mark and I got married 3 years ago, Jake had been polite but distant. I never pushed for a deep connection. I figured in time he'd come around or he wouldn't. Either way, I respected his boundaries. I walked toward the front hallway and there he was, standing with a duffel bag slung over one shoulder and an exhausted look on his face. "Jake," I said, surprised. "What are you doing here? Everything okay?" He shrugged, his expression guarded.
Yeah.
I mean, not really. The dorm pipes burst or something. They shut the whole building down. I figured I'd come crash here for a couple nights. "Of course," I replied quickly. "Come in. You must be tired." He gave me a tight smile and stepped inside, glancing around like the place had changed. It hadn't. Everything looked exactly the same. Framed photos on the wall, the scent of lavender from the diffuser, a blanket tossed over the couch. "You hungry?" I asked. He shook his head. "I just need to lay down for a bit." His old room was still intact. I hadn't touched it since he left for college, partly out of respect and partly because I didn't have the heart to erase the traces of his childhood. He thanked me quietly and disappeared down the hallway. That evening, he emerged around 7. I was making pasta and had just opened a bottle of red wine. He looked less tired, but something in his eyes felt heavy, like he was carrying more than just a bad day at school. "Dinner smells good," he said. "Hope you're okay with simple spaghetti," I replied. Didn't expect company. Spaghetti sounds great. We sat across from each other at the small kitchen table. The air between us felt less tense than usual, more open. We started talking about school, about professors he liked and ones he didn't, about campus drama and dining hall disasters. For the first time, Jake let his guard down. He laughed more easily. His voice lost the edge I'd grown accustomed to. At one point, he looked at me and said, "You know, you're way more chill than I remembered." I raised an eyebrow.
Chill. Yeah.
Like relaxed. Or maybe I'm just older now and noticing it. I laughed. "Well, I'll take that as a compliment." He smiled back, and there was something different in it. A quiet appreciation, maybe. Or something else I couldn't quite put my finger on. After dinner, we moved to the living room. He sat on the floor with his back against the couch while I curled up on the opposite end. We talked for another hour. Then, too, I told him stories about my college years, some embarrassing, some nostalgic, and he actually seemed to enjoy them. When the clock struck midnight, I stood up and stretched. "Okay, I'm officially too old to be up this late." "Thanks for the talk," he said. I didn't know I needed it until now. "Anytime," I replied, giving him a small smile before heading to my bedroom. I left my door slightly ajar, a habit I developed whenever Mark was away. It made the silence less oppressive. I slipped into a cotton tank and shorts, turned off the lamp, and crawled under the covers. Sleep came slowly, my mind still buzzing from the unexpected warmth of the evening. Then, just as I was drifting off, I heard the faint creak of the hallway floorboards. I sat up. A soft knock followed.
Jess.
Jake's voice, quiet. I got up, tightening my robe. Yeah. The door eased open, and he stood there, a strange vulnerability etched across his face.
Sorry.
I know it's late, he said. I couldn't sleep. I didn't want to be alone. I motioned for him to follow me to the kitchen. Let's make some tea. We sat at the table again, both of us clutching mugs of chamomile. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable, it was almost contemplative. Then he asked, "Can I tell you something? And you promise not to freak out." I paused, then nodded. If you weren't married to my dad, if things were different, I think I'd want to get to know you. Like really get to know you. The words landed heavily between us. My breath caught in my throat. Jake, I said carefully, I care about you. And I'm flattered. But this can't happen. You know that. He looked down, clearly ashamed. I know. I didn't mean to mess things up. You didn't, I replied gently. You're young. You're trying to understand your feelings. But I'm your stepmom. That's a boundary we have to respect. I just didn't know who else to talk to, he admitted. I reached across the table and placed a hand over his. I'm always here to talk. But we have to keep it in the right lane, okay? He nodded.
Yeah.
Okay. The next morning he was gone. His room was clean, the bed made. There was a note on the counter. Jess, thank you for handling last night with more grace than I deserved. You've always been kind, even when I didn't make it easy. I needed to say something I didn't know how to say, and you let me. Thank you for that. I'll be back when I'm in a better headspace. I folded the note and tucked it in the back of my journal. When Mark came home 2 days later, I told him Jake had stopped by unexpectedly. I didn't go into detail. I didn't have to. Jake and I shared something silent that night, not romantic, not inappropriate, but deeply human. A moment of emotional misdirection met with compassion instead of judgment. Weeks passed, then months. Jake visited again during Thanksgiving, this time lighter, freer. We exchanged smiles across the table, and there was no weight behind them, just mutual respect. We'd moved past something without ever truly stepping into it. And somehow, that made all the difference. Sometimes, the most powerful moments are the ones you never talk about again. And sometimes, walking in at the worst time ends up being exactly what was needed, not for drama or chaos, but for healing and understanding. Because in that moment, I didn't see a threat or a mistake. I saw a boy lost in the space between adulthood and innocence, trying to find a map in the dark. And maybe, just maybe, I helped him find a flashlight.